bipartisan effort.
The bill is passed.
The Senate unanimously approves a $2 trillion emergency measure to help workers and the U.S. economy. We're on Capitol Hill. Plus, analysis on whether the measure includes funding for Planned Parenthood. A criminal offense. The governor of Virginia issues an executive order regarding church services during the coronavirus pandemic. And stay close to God. Pope Francis warns the faithful about the dangers of becoming bored. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, March 26, 2020. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Late last night, the Senate passed a massive $2.2 trillion economic rescue package. The unanimous vote capped off difficult negotiations. Correspondent Eric Rosales reports now from Capitol Hill. Eric.
Well, Tracy, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says that this massive coronavirus relief bill will in fact be voted on tomorrow in the House and will pass with strong bipartisan support. But Republicans that I spoke with say not so fast. There's going to be much debate and compromise to get this done.
We will be passing the bill tomorrow.
The 880-page measure is the largest economic relief bill in U.S. history, with a price tag half the size of the entire $4 trillion plus annual federal budget.
This is an emergency, a challenge to the conscience as well as the budget of our country. And every dollar that we spend is an investment in the lives and the livelihood of the American people.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy said his members are on board, but he criticized the speaker's priorities.
She added $24 million more to the Kennedy Center. I happen to sit on the board. I support the Kennedy Center, but this is not the place and time to hold a bill up for the health care of America to provide money for the Kennedy Center. That was wrong, but that's what her win was.
Afterwards, he told me Republicans successfully blocked financial aid to Planned Parenthood in the bill. Tomorrow morning, the House will take up the bill, aiming to pass it by a voice vote. It includes an estimated $130 billion for hospitals to handle the flood of COVID-19 patients. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, gets about $45 billion for local response efforts, and $15.5 billion goes to fund food stamps.
Let's do it in a way that stays focused on the kitchen tables of America's families, their needs, their concerns, and how we can, again, meet those needs, as Pope Francis told us to take responsibility for.
And one detail that Democrats did fight for was that any business that's controlled by a member of Congress, the Trump administration, President Trump, or his immediate family would be ineligible for any relief from this bill. Tracy.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill. 3.3 million, that is how many people filed for unemployment benefits just last week as the coronavirus pandemic brought the U.S. workforce to a standstill. President Trump says it is not their fault and he's got their back. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Social distancing, such an important phrase, and we do it right now.
At the White House, as the 15 days to slow the spread campaign continues, and with more than 1,000 Americans now dead from the illness, the president emphasizing social distancing.
The more lives that we can save, and the sooner we can eventually get people back to work, back to school, and back to normal.
While people are separated from each other, they're separated from their jobs as well. Nearly 3.3 million Americans applied for unemployment benefits last week. Stephanie Myers of North Carolina knows the pain of having no job all too well. Working in the restaurant business, she just lost hers.
I'd been pretty good about holding it together, and I just finally broke down and cried. Because you have to think about what's in that bank account.
Revenue has collapsed at restaurants, hotels, movie theaters, gyms, and airlines. Non-essential businesses closed. People at home. And like anyone else suddenly jobless, after the initial shock wears off, the first concern, money.
How are you going to start paying bills? You know, I got home and started making a list. You know, okay, I've got car payment, I've got rent, I've got my insurance company.
The president says he plans to help.
If we have to go back, we have to go back. We're going to take care of the American worker. We're going to take care of these companies that fuel this country and make the country great. It's not their fault.
For the newly unemployed, uncertainty.
I don't know how long it's going to go on. I just want it to be over so I can go back to working, yes, 2 jobs and get back to my life.
The country wants to get back to work. Our country was built to get back to work. We don't have a country where they say, hey, let's close it down for 2 years. We can't do that.
For now, the battle to beat the virus and win back jobs is front and center. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Tim Carney, senior political columnist for the Washington Examiner and resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, joins me now on Skype to take a look at the bill and the road ahead. He is also the author of the book Alienated America: Why Some Places Thrive While Others Collapse. Tim, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So we've heard the president stress taking care of American workers. How important is it to keep employees on the payrolls and the political importance of doing so?
Well, there's actually a real importance to, as you put it exactly, keeping employees on the payroll. We do expand unemployment insurance with this bill, and it's really important when someone loses their job to make sure that they are getting money so they can buy the groceries, pay the rent, etc. But there's a dignity in work and an importance in being employed, whether you look at it from a moral perspective or an economic perspective. If small businesses are getting some of this money that this bill is supposed to have and can keep workers on payrolls even when they have to have their doors shut, that provides a continuity, both in their lives and economically, so that when we do open up, whenever that is, this spring, this summer, that those businesses can sort of flip a switch and get back. While if there's mass layoffs, that's very disruptive for both the businesses and the employees. So that's one of the questions in the bill. Is there enough small business aid? And is there enough aid to families to provide something close to normalcy during however long we're shut down?
Tim, we know that this relief package contains money for the American people, but there's also money for corporations. Do we know about the other entities that are benefiting from this bill?
Well, one in particular is Boeing, which, they make the jumbo jets, the 767s, et cetera, and they have access to all the lines of money that small business has, plus they'll benefit from the aid to the airlines, which are suffering a good bit. But there's a special line in the bill of $17 billion just for companies that are, quote, essential to national security. And so that is widely read, understood to be a line that Boeing lobbied for specifically. And that's important because Boeing was suffering before the coronavirus for something that had nothing to do with it, which was some of their 737s were built in such a way that 2 of them crashed. And so this seems like another case where this giant package is going through Congress and special interest lobbyists got a handout that had nothing to do with the underlying problem that the legislation was addressing.
You know, something that was talked about before is, and it doesn't contain it in it right now, is money for Planned Parenthood. It seems like that's some welcome news to pro-life advocates and no doubt will play well with the president's base. Can you talk about that?
Well, it was for a while a sticking point. It's a very important thing to the Democratic Party to get taxpayer dollars for Planned Parenthood whenever they can. And so that was a sticking point for a little while on Tuesday night. But somehow it seems that either Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Senate leader, cleared that hurdle. Back in the Obama administration, it was often the sticking point in spending bills. And so in this case, the Republicans held firm and didn't end up giving the money. And the Democrats, after sort of stretching out the bill for at least a few more days, ended up giving in without the Planned Parenthood money. So that was sort of an unlikely win for the pro-life side there.
Well, Tim, thanks so much for your insight. We appreciate it. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Members of the G20 group of world leaders took part today in an emergency video conference. The King of Saudi Arabia led the meeting. He says that he is confident the world's largest economies will come up with solutions. French President Emmanuel Macron was among the leaders who took part. Also in France, the country is using high-speed trains to treat and evacuate people diagnosed with COVID-19. Officials say the train hospital is the first of its kind in Europe. France has reported around 25,000 cases of the virus. 1 out of 10 people infected with the coronavirus are healthcare workers. That is according to the World Health Organization.
They are responding tirelessly to protect and care for you. We can only imagine their increased levels of stress during these times. Yet, they are making great sacrifices for the benefit of the broader community.
Dr. Hans Kluge, WHO's regional director for Europe, says that as of yesterday, more than 6,000 healthcare workers have been infected by the coronavirus. The WHO European region has reported nearly 12,000 deaths associated with COVID-19. About 22,000 have died worldwide. Dr. Kluge says Italy has the highest number of cases in Europe, but they have started to see a slightly lower rate of increase. Monsignor Robert Vatillo, Secretary General of the International Catholic Migration Commission, joins us now from Geneva. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're most welcome. It's good to be on the show.
Well, I know that you have many years of global health experience, and then you've also previously served as the head of the Caritas delegation to the United Nations. Can you talk about how the coronavirus is maybe different from other health crises that we've seen, and how do you think we can overcome it?
Well, first of all, it's a new virus. So we have a lot to learn about this. And also, a lot of times we compare it to the Ebola outbreak in West Africa a couple of years ago. This virus is much more contagious, but it's less lethal. And so it's hard to really know exactly how this is going to develop. The scientists are studying a great deal on it. And of course, as you know, many governments throughout the world are making restrictions on social contact so that we could try to keep people as safe and healthy as possible. At the same time, the World Health Organization is really coordinating a global response to this new pandemic.
Monsignor, according to the Jesuit Refugee Service, I know that 42,000 people are trapped in Greek refugee camps. How is the coronavirus affecting migrants' lives?
Well, this is a very serious problem. We're very, very worried about the overall impact, as we are for the rest of the world. But refugees and migrants often are more vulnerable. They many times have other health conditions that make them more vulnerable to this infection or make them vulnerable to developing more serious consequences of the infection. Also, they don't have easy access to testing for the virus or to treatment. And we're telling everyone else in the world to use voluntary quarantine and social distancing, but that's very hard to do in refugee camps or when you're in very close quarters in the urban refugees and migrants. So we're really very worried about what's going to happen to them. Just yesterday, our organization operates health clinics along the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and we just found out that one of our clinics needed to be closed down because there's an outbreak in that particular refugee camp. In many of our other programs, we're having to close down our direct services and go on to remote contact with the refugees. But that means we can't give them emergency supplies and we can't see them and do direct counseling with them. So it's very, very troubling situation.
Yeah, it is very difficult indeed. And another big question, too, is how do we balance our care and concern for those who have the virus around the world with prudence and precautions, and then for those in the ministry and those who provide medical care for them?
This is a very serious problem too. Certainly the medical people are on the first lines, and many others, police and even reporters in many ways. But we also need to be sure that we can call attention to their needs and also direct care and keep order in society. So it's a very, very big dilemma that we're facing right now. And we all still don't know, how effective the social distancing is. We know that in some cases, like in China, with a very well-enforced social distancing, it seemed to help people get through the most serious outbreak. But there are other places where we're not sure yet how effective it's going to be.
Monsignor, before we go quickly, I want to ask you this question. I know that you've been working on a series with EWTN Germany. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, it's a series called Virus Watch. Certainly, many of the UN operations are closed down or have gone on remote, but certainly WHO, the World Health Organization, is in full swing and over full swing because of the work that they had to do. I follow WHO a great deal, and so your German affiliate asked me if I would do a weekly update called Virus Watch, which I am very pleased to do with them.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for doing that as well. Monsignor Robert Vitillo, Secretary General of the International Catholic Migration Commission. Thanks for your insight.
Thank you, Tracy.
Well, the man who killed 51 people in a shooting last year in New Zealand has changed his plea to guilty. A court hearing was quickly arranged before the country goes into a 4-week lockdown to combat the coronavirus pandemic.
It is regrettable that the COVID-19 restrictions that presently apply do not permit victims and their families to travel, to be present in the courtroom when the defendant entered his pleas of guilty.
Judge Cameron Mander has not yet set a sentencing date. The 29-year-old gunman faces life in prison. The attack on 2 mosques was the worst mass killing in New Zealand's modern history. Coming up, the governor of Virginia issues a list of essential businesses. We'll tell you if it includes houses of worship. Plus, the chairman and CEO of EWTN tells us how the network will continue to bring services to the faithful. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is suspending all services over fears of the coronavirus. The Utah-based faith said the temporary ban was made after careful consideration. There are around 16 million Mormons around the world. In Virginia, it is now a criminal offense to attend church services of more than 10 people. Governor Ralph Northam's executive order went into effect this week. It makes any non-essential gathering a misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in jail or a fine of $2,500. Correspondent Mark Irons reports.
As the coronavirus sweeps across the country, state governors are taking action to limit the spread. In Virginia, Executive Order 53 says all gatherings of more than 10 people are banned statewide. And that order includes religious gatherings. In Virginia and in states throughout the country, the Catholic Church has suspended public masses. Without normal means to gather in worship or prayer, the faithful are looking for new ways to come together in community.
We're hosting online Bible studies. We use a video platform to do the Divine Mercy Chaplet every day at 3 p.m.
Those are just some of the ways Belen Loza, a Focus missionary, stays connected with her students. Focus sends out young adults to share the gospel on college campuses. Loza was stationed at Columbia University in New York City, but now she carries out her mission remotely, back at home in Texas.
We're not able to meet students at the dining hall for a meal or grab coffee with them, but it hasn't changed our mission to reach out to them, to spend time with them, to pray with them.
And we're seeing the clergy get creative. This priest in Bowie, Maryland hears drive-through confessions, leaving room for social distance. It's understandable why precautions are in place.
And it is genuinely necessary to protect the public safety because of a huge health crisis.
But at the same time, Dr. Thomas Farr, president of the Religious Freedom Institute in Washington, says deeming church gatherings criminal in Virginia, even in a time like this, raises concerns, especially when places like laundromats, pet stores, and liquor stores are being considered essential.
The explicit proposition that church services and Catholic masses are not essential compared to these other things is unacceptable.
In Washington, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
The cancellation of public masses has been quite a loss to the faithful. That said, it has also been a time to give thanks for the many ways in which we are still able to worship. Joining me now is Michael Warsaw, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer of EWTN. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
And so you are CEO and you're also the board chair of the largest religious media network in the world. What role do you think we at EWTN should play during this time?
Well, I think there's so much anxiety, there's so much fear. People feel untethered, and I think one of the things that EWTN provides is a place that people can turn to ground themselves, to connect themselves with the faith, and really to sort of find reassurance that God is there for them in this really difficult time. That's, I think, one of the great things about EWTN from its founding. Mother Angelica always wanted EWTN and its audience to be a family, and I think in this time and in this moment, we are very much a family for one another.
Absolutely. And I know that you're doing everything you can to keep us all safe here at EWTN, but the coronavirus, it did hit home. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we've been dealing with the coronavirus really since the outbreak first began in China many weeks ago. It first impacted our operations in our Asia-Pacific office based in Manila. And then we saw that sort of move across the globe to Rome and the impact that that's had on our Rome office, which has been now closed for several weeks as they're dealing with the issues there, and then ultimately here to the United States. So most of our employees are working remotely, and we have essential staff who are still on duty in their posts in Irondale and here in Washington and elsewhere. And we're certainly prepared if we need to do more restrictions. But the bottom line of that is that we will continue to air our channels. We will continue to produce programming, particularly the Mass, news, other key programming. That will continue. And we're prepared for that to continue.
Michael, can you talk about how EWTN is responding, about the pandemic through our programming and helping our viewers and listeners all around the world?
Well, one of the things that I think we've heard so much about is just with all of the churches closed and the inability of people, not just in this country but globally, really, to be able to attend Mass on Sunday. People tying into our Mass and participating remotely in our Mass, has been really a lifeline for many people to the practice of their faith. The ability to watch the Mass on EWTN, both on our linear channels, but also online on EWTN.com, to listen to that on radio. As well as Eucharistic adoration. One of the things we've done is live streaming of Eucharistic adoration via our website. And so many people have commented to us how much that has meant to them and how meaningful that has been to them to be able to have that opportunity to pray and to know that when they are praying, when they are participating in watching that, they're doing so with people all over the world who are part of that EWTN family. So I think that's one of the things we're trying to do, and across the board with all of our programming, really trying to be a resource for people and to give people hope and to remind people that in this moment, what's most important is that we need to keep our eyes fixed on Christ.
Absolutely. You briefly mentioned the audience. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how the audience is responding, what they're saying? Well,
we've heard from people all over the world who really have said how in this moment of despair when they want to go to church, they want to go to their parish, they want to connect with their local community, they can't do that. And so EWTN is that point of connection for them. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a very beautiful thing. And what it's done also, I think, because of the moment, is that it's brought people to EWTN and to our platforms who may not necessarily be regular viewers, may not be Catholic, may not be religious people at all, but people are in such a state of anxiety and concern that they're looking for hope and they're looking for answers. And I think them coming to EWTN is a beautiful thing and a way for them to find those answers and to find that hope that they're looking for.
It certainly is, and we're glad that we're here during this time too for them. How can viewers help if they want to?
Sure. Well, I think there's three things that our EWTN family can do. One is certainly pray. We need to pray for one another, pray for the network as we pray for them. I think secondly, share what they have in the gift of EWTN. This is a great opportunity to evangelize. So if people are benefiting by EWTN, they need to share that with their friends, share that with their family. That's a very effective way of helping others and evangelizing in this moment. And thirdly, keep us between your gas and electric bill, as Mother Angelica would always say. It's very important that we have the resources to be able to continue our mission and to continue to execute our mission to a much, much larger audience of people that are turning to us at this time. So financial support is critical for us in this moment as well. So, and we're obviously very grateful to our EWTN family for that.
Absolutely. Michael, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for all you do. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Michael Warsaw, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer of EWTN. Thank you so much. And as Michael Warsaw mentioned, you can always watch our daily masses right here on EWTN. Mass is broadcast each day at 8 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. Eastern. We're also airing the Pope's daily mass as well as the novena from Our Lady of Lourdes. In addition, we are offering Eucharistic adoration from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern on EWTN.com. Up next, Pope Francis gives the faithful advice on dealing with fear. Plus, how churches in France honor those fighting the coronavirus. An Italian bishop is the first bishop known to have died from COVID-19. Bishop Angelo Moreschi has been a missionary in Ethiopia since the early 1990s. He was well known in that country for his work with young people and the poor. Bishop Moreschi was 67 years old. For more on the story, including reaction from the bishop's order in Italy, you can visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Pope Francis reminds the faithful that it is only natural to be scared in this difficult time, but there is a way to calm our fears, asking for help from God.
Qual è l'idolo che tu hai nel tuo cuore, nel mio cuore?
At his daily mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father also reflected on the times we become bored and turn towards habits distancing ourselves from the Lord. Instead, we should ask God to help us recognize and remove anything keeping us from Him. Finally, tonight, churches across France paid tribute to those who have died from the coronavirus pandemic and the healthcare workers who are fighting to keep others alive. The churches rang their bells at 7:30 p.m. yesterday, the Feast of the Annunciation. The serenade lasted 10 minutes. Many people posted videos online of the bells ringing in their towns. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.